Welcome to the Bass and Brews podcast, your weekly distraction from other high-quality podcasts. And now, your host, Alex from Swamp Rat Fishing, and the co-hostess with the mostest, the Jabberhammer, Paul Roberts.
Hello, welcome. Bass and Brews podcast, your weekly distraction from quality podcast content. And tonight, whenever you're listening to this, we had the Queen City Chronicles Stop 7. And we got a couple guests on tonight from that stop that are going to talk about what they did and why they weren't good enough to actually win, even though they came close. We're going to dive into why they could have won but didn't. And, it's going to be a good time. Just like with our Queen City Chronicles, we're highlighting anglers from Queen City Kayak bass fishing out of the Charlotte area, but they aren't just Charlotte. They're North Carolina, South Carolina. To my knowledge, the biggest grassroots local club by tournament participation in the country. I could be wrong, but I don't think I am. But they average about 120 folks. So if you hadn't listened to this podcast before, on the Queen City Chronicles side, we're going to have a good time with it. We're going to get some tournament information from the locals here. And, who knows? It's Bass and Brews. Who knows what's going to happen? I don't. So our guests tonight, we got Taylor and we got Tim. Fellas, how y'all doing?
Doing good.
Good. Great.
You know what? Just from us talking the last few minutes in the green room in the back before we started, I ask y'all that question and we get single word answers. I'm a little disappointed. Just because this little red button up here says live don't mean y'all got this. You got to turn. You don't have to get nervous and quiet now. So how are we doing tonight, fellas?
Well, I'm not working, so I'm great.
Well,
Yeah, I just got back from walking the dog. I'm relaxing. It's good.
I can tell because Tim, when he sat down, he got logged on and he was wiping the sweat off his face with a towel. So
It's hot out there.
Exercise. Look, it's North Carolina. It's hotter than hell outside. And I'm in my garage, too, y'all. I'm in my garage. It's North Carolina. It's hot as hell. I got fans blowing. I ain't got no air conditioner. I'm a little bit overweight. I'm sweaty. But, that's what keeps me going. That's what keeps me going. This is the exercise I get being on the podcast. You can believe that or not.
Yeah.
I can believe it.
All right. So, stop 7, right? Am I right on that? This was the stop 7, right?
Yeah.
Where
I had
did
to
we
look and check.
fish?
I went to Lake Wiley, South
Okay.
Point access.
Yeah. And I was at Lake Wiley also. I went to the bridge access, Buster Boyd.
So Lake Wiley, back in the early 2000s and 90s, Lake Wiley was a pro lake, like had some good fish in it. And then over the last, 20 years, we're talking about now, the lake has been a struggle. And you hear people say, oh, there's still some big fish out there. But when you look at the tournament standings, you don't quite see it in the tournament standings.
Mm-hmm.
Are y'all familiar? All right. So Taylor, let's start with you, buddy. Are you familiar
Yes, sir.
with this lake? Are you familiar with it? Did you have a good plan going on? Did you get to pre-fish at all?
Well, I definitely didn't get to pre-fish, and I'm actually pretty against pre-fishing personally, but that could just be my inexperience because, I do follow Brandon Palaniuk. That's my man on the pro level for both. So as far as pre-fishing goes, I see the importance of it. But then again, like 90% of the time you see, I caught a 8-pound bass in my pre-fish, and then they do terrible in the tournament. So for one, I have an hour-and-a-half drive, so it's definitely not a pre-fishing tournament for me, full-time job. I didn't even know where I was going to fish because as soon as Vinny said the Catawba chain, there was no light bulb that went off at all other than Norman. And that was obviously not an option for this one, so I was pretty much screwed. So, I'm looking at Mountain Island, I'm looking at Lookout Shoals, Road Hiss, like the ones that are basically closest to me as far as driving goes. And then everything that I planned on doing the week prior, Vinny in his live to the Queen City basically said, don't go to here, don't go here, don't go here. In a roundabout way, he narrowed it down for us so we had the best chance. So it was narrowed down to Lake James for the potential for a big fish, Lake Wiley was kind of my own research, looking at which one was the closest to the Catawba River section that had the biggest bass. Total guess. Vinny said it was probably a bad guess on my part, but that's why I went to Lake Wiley. And there was a North Carolina section, a small North Carolina section, and I don't have a South Carolina fishing license, so I was pretty much narrowed down to 2 accesses.
Hold
So
up
next
now.
thing,
Hold up. Time out. I got 2 things. One, it's a Catawba chain, so it's a multi-lake event. Can y'all tell us so the Catawba's a river in kind of that mid to midwestern part of North Carolina. What lakes were available for you to fish in this Catawba region?
Yeah. So we had James, Hickory, Roadhiss, Lookout Shoals,
Mountain
skipped
Island.
over Norman, Mountain Island, Wiley. I don't remember
Watery?
if Fishing Creek. Watery was on there. I don't remember if Fishing Creek was on there.
And then he added the Catawba River as well, the section
Okay,
below Wiley, I think.
All right, cool. We got that out of the way. That's Catawba chain. Taylor, how the hell did you just not go spend your $15, $20 to get you a South Carolina license for a few days? I mean,
Well,
are you are you that cheap, sir?
Well, here's the thing. It was Friday night at like 9 p.m. when I was talking to Vinny about South Point access to begin with. So I was looking at Mountain Island, Lookout Shoals, Roadhiss. All those are North Carolina. So not a doubt in my mind that I was fishing North Carolina. I thought Wiley was all South Carolina. So the fact that it had a small section of North Carolina and it was the closest to my house from the other lakes that I was looking at, it just kind of seemed like a win-win. I mean, it was still an hour and a half, but that was close for me because I could wake up early at 3:30 and roll with it.
Okay, so we didn't do any pre-fishing. Long way away. You picked the one section of Wiley that was in North Carolina because you're too cheap to go buy a South Carolina license. All right,
that's about right.
and you finished 7th in the tournament, correct?
That is correct. Yeah,
All
I
right.
beat him with a paddle.
There we go. Tim, what's your story, man? What took you to Wiley versus the other ones?
So I have a similar story. So I wasn't supposed to fish this tournament at all because my family, every 2 years, my extended family, or not extended, my immediate family, brothers, there's like almost 30 of us when we all get together. We get a house out at Myrtle Beach, and Saturday was the day we were supposed to go. My wife and I were signed up for dinner the first night. So I wasn't even going to fish. And then we kind of came up with a plan on how my wife could manage dinner without me. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to fish, but I'm going to fish the absolute closest access point to my house, which pretty much Buster Boyd was. It's just under 30 minutes from my house. So that was the one. And I was lucky enough. I did get to pre-fish the week before. I went to a different ramp the week before and learned what I didn't want to do and decided to do something completely different, and it worked out. So
Wiley's 30 minutes from your house. Are you familiar with that lake? Do you have some spots there? I mean, is that your home lake, or are you closer to like Norman? I guess you are. You said you're North Charlotte, so maybe Norman's your home lake.
mean, so I can get to places on Mountain Island and Wiley quicker than I can get to Norman. It's probably more like 45 minutes for me. I like fishing Norman better just because I seem to do a little better. But my teammate for the Queen City tournament is Landon Smith, who you've had on a few times.
Mm-hmm.
And I've gone out fishing with him on Wiley, and I've seen him catch 20, 21, 22-inch largemouth down there. So I know they're a big fish, and I know they're catchable, but it's hit and miss. So I've never personally done that well down there, but I knew I could if I got lucky, and it worked out. So.
And the most important part about this was it was closest to your house while your wife cooked for 30-plus people by herself.
That's right.
While you were out walking around fishing off of a kayak.
Yes, I must say I hit the jackpot with my wife because she let me go fishing instead of going to the beach. So
hey, but if he brought home the money though, she would have been real happy about it because he paid for all the food.
Well, I went. Yeah, so after coming in second, I my family found out, and I had to buy drinks the first night. So
that's a good family. They understand what winning money is like, because when you win money, you're in charge of buying a few rounds of drinks. I like that. I like that.
Yeah, my wife was in Tennessee, so the 250 I got came to PayPal, went into the account, immediately got spent by my wife. So it was good. Good times.
Hey, I get it. My tournament winnings a couple of weeks ago went straight to the bank account. That went straight to my little Cabela's card that I buy all my fishing stuff with and pay for all my tournament entries with. And it's paying this on the 13th of this month. So yeah, that's how
there
it
you
goes.
go.
All right, Taylor.
Yes.
You drive down Saturday morning. Have you ever been to this location before?
Never.
So you head down to South Point on Lake Wiley in the North Carolina side because you didn't want to buy a fish South Carolina license. And you hop in a place you've never been to. Did you do any map study, or you just went down there and be like, you know what, this is where the fish should be. There's places where they should be, and I'm just going to go out there and see if I can wreck them.
So if you go on Google and look at anything having to do with bass on the Catawba River chain, I've probably read it all. And so that was pretty much all Friday night. So I slept an hour Friday night because obviously this was a last minute change, and I started to figure out what I was going to fish. And I never set up my rods ahead of time, but I knew that if I didn't, driving an hour and a half and showing up at 5:30 a.m. and first cast at 6, if I wasn't ready, I would be screwed. So for the first time, I took initiative. I was sitting at this table right here. I had the whole table full of hard bait, soft baits, hooks, lines, everything. I was learning new fishing knots so I could tie on leaders. First time I've ever tied on leaders in my entire fishing career, period. And, using a little bit lighter test on my leaders, just assuming that the fish would be a little bit more pressured and not wanting to bite in the heat. And then I studied and I drank 2 or 3 and finally went to sleep around 3, woke up at 4, or maybe I went to sleep at like 2:45, woke up at 3:30, something along those lines, took a shower, grabbed a Celsius, and hit the road. And rolled up at 5:30, and I saw, I cannot remember his name, the owner of Gas House Custom Rods. Vinny, he sponsored that tournament, I believe. Okay. I cannot remember his name, but I rolled up and he was there. And, I'm like, do I just pull up and put my boat in and go? There's all these guys with $3,000 setups, like pedal drives, boat trailers, and I'm pulling mine out of the back of a truck and hauling it with one hand down to the water.
You're so it's like, down the boat ramp.
Literally after I got everything in, I was like, dang, like, how am I going to get this in the water? And I just pushed it down and there's just scrape down the concrete. So, yeah, definitely new territory for me, for sure.
What are you fishing out of?
So it's an Emotion Angler 10, basically a $300 Academy kayak that I got back when I was in college at ECU. Just a paddle, to sit on top with like the built-in foot pedals. I did install a Garmin Striker 4 on it to help with depths a little bit. Doesn't really give you much help on fish because it's basic, but knowing if you're in 3 foot of water or 30 foot of water definitely helps.
Did you go out to fish the stuff? And I'm going to answer part of my question here, and I'm going to tell you the answer. So did you go out to areas where you thought the fish were going to be and fish techniques that you thought would work, or did you find areas you thought the fish were going to be and fish techniques that you like? But it sounds like you went out to an area you thought the fish were going to be, and you fished some shit that you thought they'd be biting because you said you were tying leaders the night before and you'd never tied them before.
So yes and no. I tied leaders because I've always used mono. I'm just recently getting more into fluorocarbon, and I like it a lot for strength. And so that was relatively new. But I showed up to the South Point Access, put my kayak in. It was 5:59, first cast at 6 or first cast 6:30, I can't remember. And I started casting. I didn't go anywhere. I was to the left of the ramp. There was people behind me putting in, and I'm fishing. Like, I'm just getting started. Didn't get any bites, and I was like, okay, maybe I should get away from the ramp. And I went directly to the right of the ramp. Like, I could throw a rock and hit the ramp, and I caught my first spot. So it's like I did not go far at all. And I stayed right there for like an hour. Caught 2, put 1 in trying to get small bass, and put 1 in at like a 14.5, something like that. Real basic. Using the old Popeye style pond topwater fishing baits. Well, look, I heard whopper ploppers from my right, from my left, everywhere. That's all you could hear. That's all you could hear. And I was like, I ain't throwing that no more.
you submitting a 14-inch fish for small fish was wasted time because
No. I caught a 10-inch spot. I did catch a 10.
But no, even at Queen City, a 10-inch fish is not going to be little
now
fish.
I know because
to
people
be
are
in that
throwing their
5 to
pinky
6.
in there and cause. Yeah, no,
you
I
got
see it
people
now.
that are having to. They can't. It don't even hit the bump on it. I mean, this is one of the things I love about Queen City, and so hand. We call him on Bass and Brews, call him hand job adventures, but Dustin hands-on adventures. He says for 2 years he got his tournament fees paid for and made money off of small fish. And then we had Matt on, who also has won small fish two times in a row. So, the small fish in Queen City is a good way to make some money. Tim, man.
I have noticed.
Yeah. Tim, what were you going in to do? You obviously went pre-fishing. You had an idea where not to go, what not to do. But were you prepared to just go fish what you like to fish in areas you thought they were going to be, or were you just going to go out there and beat some water and see what happens?
Yeah. So for me, because it was, I kind of saw it as a freebie, right? I wasn't supposed to fish the tournament, so I kind of was relaxed going in, didn't feel a lot of pressure. I was hoping to do well, so I stay decent in the year-long standings. But I wanted to also try some new water because, if I do make the TOC, the end of the year, we're fishing on Wiley, and the ramp I normally go to, which is, now it's slipping my mind, it's going to be closed at the end of the year.
Ebenezer, isn't it?
Yeah, Ebenezer. So I normally go there. I love Ebenezer, but it's going to be closed. So I'm like, I need to learn some new water. So I went somewhere I've never been. I went north from the ramp instead of south. I think I was at launch. There were 8 guys, actually guys and gals at the ramp. All of them went south. I went north. And I decided I was going to pedal as far as I could. And after 30 minutes, wherever I was going to start fishing and work my way back. And it was one of those things where I got, stopped at 30 minutes, and I was still kind of messing around, getting my stuff ready. I threw my bait out there, and I wasn't even paying attention, and it hit. I thought for sure I was going to lose it because I wasn't paying attention. It stayed on there, and it was a 19-incher, and that was my biggest of the day. 5 minutes in, and I'm like, you know what? It's one of those days. I got a good start, and it went from there. So.
And what are you fishing out of?
So I've got a Hobie, the PA-14. I started in I still actually have my Slayer Max that I keep. So I have a place up in Wilkesboro on Kerscott. Keep my Slayer Max up there, and then I use my Hobie for tournaments. So.
My man, Crib. See, Alex, my guest co-host, who's not here for this because he's a pansy and has to work and wake up early in the morning, and so does Tim. And Tim's here, but Alex isn't here. But anyway, Alex is an old town guy, but it's because he's short. And, he's scared that he can't reach the pedals in a Hobie, and he's also he's got little legs, and he's scared that the fin. Anyway, it's just a terrible thing, Alex.
I do. I think the stability in the Hobie. My Slayer was great. The Hobie, though, I feel like sometimes it's almost unsinkable unless you get a hole in it. But that's another story.
That does happen. We'll be real with Hobie. They do get some holes in the newer models. But yeah, I'm kind of large. I've gained about 40 pounds over the last year and a half, and the stability on my Hobie hasn't done anything. I can still reach my hand over the side to wash off. My fish stink and all that good stuff, and I don't have to worry about flipping over. Especially, I fish a lot of offshore stuff too.
Oh, yeah.
So when you get a lot of the wake boats and shit like that, I'm a little less worried about it. All right, so you went north, 30 minutes, first fish, 19-incher. Sounds like you're fishing shallow.
Yeah, so I started back in a cove, and kind of threw it toward the shore, between the shore and a dock. It was probably about through a whopper plopper, and it was probably, I think where I threw it, it was probably 1 to 2 feet deep. When the fish bit, it was probably 3 foot of water. Got my second fish in near a similar dock situation, about 15 minutes later. And that kind of, I will say this is probably the first tournament I ever will say I found a pattern that worked almost all day. So pretty much everything I caught was docks in, probably less than 10 feet of water. So
wow, that's crazy. And so top water bite early. Did you go into like a wacky rig or a jig or something after that?
So I did. So the bite died, and then I went about 2 hours, wasn't catching anything. And this is, again, it's one of those things where it just kind of the day worked out. So, like I mentioned earlier, Landon Smith is my teammate, and everybody knows Landon throws a wacky rig all day, and he just kills them. And I've seen him catch giant fish on Wiley. So I'm throwing a wacky rig, and I'm not catching anything. So I thought to myself, Landon's always telling me, trust your gut. And something told me to put on shaky head. So I switched to a shaky head and caught actually three fish in about another 30 minutes. And just threw a shaky head the rest of the day and kept calling up. So it worked out.
Were you catching largies or catching spots?
Mostly spots. I caught one real nice 18.5 largemouth, but the rest were pretty much spots.
How about you, Taylor? Were you on a spot bite, largemouth bite?
So my first fish early on was also topwater on that popper, and I kept it going because we got some rain. I don't know if it was raining where you were, Tim, but I got rain and cloud cover all the way up until like 12. So I kept the topwater on as long as I could, and I caught 5 fish, but only 3 of them would actually go in. And my largemouth that I caught right after the first spot was easily 6 or 7 pounds, but largemouth aren't quite as long as spots. So that was a 20.5, 20 3/4. And I caught one more spot after that. So I had 2 spots and 1 largemouth. And then I went just like Tim. I mean, I went through a big drought for the majority of the day. After like 10 o'clock, I didn't catch nothing. And I finally picked up a jig later on and started flipping a few docks and just practicing my skips under the docks because it's something I need to practice. And I hooked, I think it was a 19-incher. And Vinny said if I would have had that 19-incher, I would have been in the top 3. But he flipped off underneath the dock. I kept pitching the same post for like 30 minutes and finally caught another one that was like 14.5, but it was enough to get my 4th fish. And that was the end for me. So 3 total spots on the day, 1 big largemouth.
And so, folks, again, if first time listening, Queen City runs off of a 4 fish, not a 3 or 5 fish limit. It's a 4 fish limit. So these guys are fishing for 4 big bites is what they're going off of. When was your last fish then, Taylor?
I think my last fish was like, was last cast at 2, Tim, or 2:30?
2.
So if last cast was at 2, it was probably 1:30.
Oh, wow. Cutting it short.
Yeah. But see, so here's the thing, and this also, I know we're not talking about Fontana now, but that's the last one I did for the Western Division this past weekend. But I have only a paddle. So like getting from point A to point B, if I do find a pattern, is really difficult because like at Fontana, I was at the back of a creek, caught my smallmouth, went to another back of a creek, caught my spot, went to another back of a creek, caught my largemouth, but my last fish was at 15 minutes until the end because I had just got to the creek. So like I can find a pattern and stick with it. It takes me so long to get to another spot that I've just got to like outfish other guys to the best of my ability. And my back is ripped from just paddling all freaking day.
Not only that, when your ass gets back to the ramp at the end of the day, you're glad that you have a cheaper, kayak that is easy to haul back and throw in the boat because
dude, I'm suitcasing that thing. Yeah, dude, I'm suitcasing that thing to the back of the truck, throwing it in, no straps
through the concrete. The hill with a keel. I don't need that. I will bondo that keel if I put a hole in it. We ain't worried about.
Don't talk to me about that, dude. I've got a freaking wine cork plug in my kayak right now. There was just a little bit of water around the transducer at the end of the day, but not enough to break through the duck seal. So it worked out well.
When was your last fish, Tim? You went on a long drought.
Yeah, so I caught them in I guess bunches. So I went that 2-hour drought after the first couple, then caught like 3 real quick, then I think I went until, so the middle group was around probably 9 o'clock. And then I went till about 11:30 before I caught a couple another big ones. So between 11:30 and 12:45, I caught probably the 2 biggest culls I had. And then I think I got my last fish around 1:15. But
okay, so cutting it close again.
Yeah. But yeah, it was you've seen these lakes, especially in the summer. Where I was on the lake, it's not real wide, and so there's tons of boat traffic, and it starts getting really, really hairy out there. If you're in a small paddle kayak, you might not be so happy out there. But so it started to get difficult to fish the spots I wanted to fish, because most of the stuff I wanted to do was main lake, not back in coves, and it just gets real hard to fish those spots.
So main lake, were you still fishing shallow on the main lake, or were you trying to get out on some structure?
No, I was definitely staying toward the shore. Like I said, I was basically found everything on docks. Other than the morning bite, everything else was pretty much main lake docks or docks near the front of a cove. I went back into a couple coves, and it seemed to be a waste of time. I think those, when I hit my droughts, was when I was messing around in the back of coves and shouldn't have been. So.
And you finished second, right? How many inches were y'all first?
I think I was about 5 inches off, so it'd have been a tough haul to get there. I think I had 72, and the winner had 77. So,
what could you have done? What could you have done to been first instead of first loser?
Yeah. Wow. So my wife was in the Navy, and she talks that term all the time. I don't know where you learned that, first loser, but that's her favorite thing to say.
Well, I grew up in sports, and so I was still very competitive, and it's a second place finish is something to go home and be proud about. But you also sit back, like, man, fuck, I still didn't win, and I was in a position to win, but I wasn't good enough to win, and that pisses me off more than anything.
Yeah, it's true. I think this is my third season in, and my first season, my goal was to not skunk, right? And then my second season, my goal was to get a limit, and now it's like the better you get, the more you feel like you need to be better. So it's like you catch 4 fish, and you're like, well, yeah, but I have a limit, but I want a bigger limit. So you always, it's kind of like you say, finishing second, it's still not first. And I think for me, what I learned is what I tend to do when I'm fishing a tournament, and I feel like I'm pressured. I'm trying to catch up to people in the lead, and I start changing my baits. I start throwing different things, doing stuff I'm not comfortable with, trying to figure out what I'm doing. I think the difference in this tournament was I was more relaxed because I caught that 19 right away. And I was just able to just do one technique and just do that one technique and stick to it. And I think if I had not spent time running to the back of, coves and stuff, I probably would have had a chance to get another big one and maybe move up. But, you learn.
Hey, but you also could have run back to one of those back of those creeks and caught a 22-incher. I mean,
True.
You can't, with fishing, you can't like, well, I should have done this. I could have done this. I could have done that. But you never know. You might have made that run and done something that has worked for somebody else in the past, and you're like, let me go try it, and caught it. You didn't, but hey, you still got second. I mean, that's what it is.
Yep.
Tim, what you said this is your third year fishing Queen City.
Yep.
Is that how long you've been in a kayak? What got you started into the kayak game?
Oh,
and how did you get into Queen City?
That's a great story. So, back in the COVID times, as I like to say, it was 2020. Like everybody else, we got a dog, got a puppy, and
y'all went all out COVID. We got a dog, we got kayaks.
Well, so the dog is what got me into kayaks. So I got the dog, and this was also we decided to we needed a place to escape the big city, so we got a place up in Wilkesboro, and I got my first boat. I won't call it a bass boat; it's more of a fishing ski, right? But anyway, I had this boat in the driveway when my dog was getting trained for invisible fence. And the trainer just so happened to be Shelly Whistler, who is a big member, longtime member of QC. And she gets out of the car and she looks at my boat and she goes, "Oh, you're one of those glitter rocket guys." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" She goes, "Well, us kayak people call you glitter rockets." And I'm like, what are you talking about? What's this kayak thing? So she started telling me all about it. And I kept in touch with her. I kept talking to her about it. And then she put me in touch with Vinny, started talking to him about it. And then, 2021, I decided, why not? So I started doing it. I've been fishing since I was 6 years old, but nothing serious, obviously. And so it was a whole new experience for me. And being an engineer, I like experimenting. I wanted to learn. So I started doing research.
And everything.
Oh yeah. And, so it's about just getting better, always getting better. And that first year, like I said, I think my first 3 or 4 tournaments I skunked. And I was like, I just want to catch some fish, right? And so by the end of the year, I think I finally got one limit that whole first season. And then the second season, my goal was to try to get as many limits as I could. Actually, I think my goal the second season was just not skunk. And I think I did that. And then this season, my goal was to try to get a limit every tournament. I think I've only the one term I got 3 fish, but everything else I've got a limit so far. So it's been fun. It's like anything, the more you practice, the better you get.
That's right. Time on the water, you hear it all the time in fishing. It really is one of those things that can make a difference in your growth. Taylor, what's the story? I know you're over there pointing at somebody, so look, do what you got to do. Tell them to be quiet. This is important. But I'm just kidding. What got you into kayak fishing? How long have you been doing it?
So back when I was at ECU pre-COVID, my senior year of college, I needed something to do just to get outside. I loved fishing, but you can only find so many bank fishing spots on Google Maps. So I decided to get a kayak. Yeah, legally. So I decided to get a kayak, cheapest one I could find at Academy that was a fishing kayak, which was that $300 kayak, $50 with paddles. And I have a Mazda 6 car. So I put the pads on top, strapped it down. Dude, I mean, I spend 30 minutes every time I go fishing just getting it on and off. But I found everywhere I could, the Tar Rivers there at ECU. Unfortunately, I started skipping some classes because I was fishing all the time on my kayak. But I was catching about this many fish.
It don't matter. You were fishing instead of being in class. And you know what? You still graduated. That's all that counts.
Hey, I graduated with an exceptional GPA. We won't say what it was, though.
Well, then you earned the right to skip some classes and to say to hell with it.
Right. And so then, after that, though, I stopped kayak fishing for a little while. I got my internship, met my wife, doing some things. And then I got back into it when I came back home. This is post-COVID. Then obviously kayaking becomes very important because you don't want to sit inside all the time. And at least on the water, nobody's bothering you. And so that's when I started trying out some of the local lakes. And like I said, I still wasn't catching many fish, but I was catching one big one every time I would go. And so I knew that it was something that I could get into. But again, I have a few limitations. I'm paddling, you guys talking about all your pedals and all the limitations you have with your pedal kayaks. It really makes me jealous for the little bit that I have. And so again, it sounds like Tim, he got put in touch with Vinny, myself as well, got put in touch with Vinny.
So how did you get in touch with Vinny then? What was the catalyst?
I think I've played sports. I played ultimate frisbee in college. I played basketball. I was always into sports. And so
Bless you, child. Bless you. Good Lord. Get that woman some Allegra.
He said, get that woman some Allegra. It's okay. We forgive you. No, I'm just kidding. So anyways, I started getting out on the water and I was like, you know what? I need some money. And it looks like Queen City is actually a good way to potentially make some.
This man said, I got a $300 kayak and I need some money. Let me go start tournament fishing. Probably what 90% of us said at some point in our journey of going into tournament kayak fishing. And then 2 years later, you're like, whew, boy, I'm so glad I started this tournament fishing so I could win all this money that I'm spending.
Hey, but I will say I've made $250 my very first tournament ever. So I started out strong and I would have placed better at Fontana, but it was 2:00 by the time I got to the last creek and you can only catch so many fish in 5 minutes. So
about 1.5.
Yeah. And I did catch one and then a spot of, it's 15 foot of water clarity at Fontana and a school of largemouth swim past me and they're all 19, 20 inches. And I'm throwing my shaky head, about hitting them in the head, trying my best to snag them. But anyways, so yeah, I got into fishing, got in touch with Vinny, asked him a billion questions. I got my catch board, got my ID card. all the things you got to do to get going. Started fishing a monthly. Caught my first 2 fish the very first time I went out. My life jacket was unbuckled. He DQ'd my first 2 fish. They were both 21 inches each. So like I started out and then I stopped. I was like, screw this, I'm not gonna do it. But then he was like, I know, right? He was like, dude, just get out there, try a tournament. Like, we got this coming up. And then he started making it realistic. He was like, dude, the TOC, like, you could be a charity case and fish everything that's left and still potentially get to the TOC. So with that being said, I said, okay, let's get down to business. I went to Wiley. I went to Fontana. Next is the charity just for fun, and then Murray and so on and so forth. So Vinny's the man. He told me to talk up Queen City, and I'm going to talk up Vinny too because it seems like Vinny's a common theme, and he's the man. He's done a fantastic job of getting me set up, and I'm going to shout him out because I have bugged the crap out of him. His wife probably knows my name by now because he's like, sorry, honey, I got to talk to Taylor for a second and answer his billion questions. So
except him DQing you over an unbuttoned life jacket.
I was like, dude, come on.
Look, don't fuck around with Vinny on the rules now because there's no gray area in Vinny's rules. This black
and that's how it should be, though. That's what gives you the reassurance that you're on a level playing field.
That's exactly. Couldn't have said it no better myself. Mm-hmm. All right, so both of y'all have what year was this when you actually got started into fishing the daily tournaments, the trail tournaments? What year was this, Taylor?
This is like a month ago.
Okay, so 2023.
2023, yeah.
Great. So we got 2 guys that are one brand spanking new, an infant, and then we got Tim that is in his terrible 3s. One of the outlying themes that we hear from Queen City folks on the Queen City Chronicles and on the folks we've had from Queen City before is about how the better anglers, the anglers that typically finish higher in the standings, how much they reach out to new people to help them and to guide them and be like, hey, come fishing with me and do this and that. We hear that so many times with Queen City. Did y'all get that from those folks wanting to help and wanting to give information and wanting to help you get better at fishing? Did y'all run into that with folks in Queen City?
Oh, definitely. For me, I mean, it's the culture, the group. I mean, it's amazing. I don't think I've met anybody that hasn't been extremely generous with their time, their knowledge. You know, those people they'll tell you everything they're throwing. You know, it's amazing. And you know, one of the other stories about this tournament that you know I wanted to share was I started at the ramp with 8 people. One of them was Tori Brenneman and Ryan Brenneman were there, and yeah, so they're there and they're getting all set up. You know, it's pitch black, and Tori didn't have her light. She'd, I guess, left her headlamp at home. And you know, I've known Tori for a couple of years, and I think it was 2 years ago we were out at Santee, and it was 20-mile-an-hour winds. I could not get back to the dock. I mean, I was pedaling as hard as I could. I couldn't get there because every time I got close to reach out for the dock, I had to stop pedaling and I'd get blown away. And she comes running from her car out to the dock and says, "Throw me your rope." And I'll never forget that. You know, she didn't know me from Adam and came out there, pulled me in, and I found out she was friends with Shelly and I'm friends with Shelly. So I've kind of been hanging out with them. And so here she is. She's without a light. And I was like, I got a spare headlamp. So I gave her the headlamp. It's just one of those things, you know, we're kind of like all a big family, you know, we help each other out, and that's what I love about it.
And you know, Tori is the Bass and Brews librarian, if y'all didn't know that. She's the one that has all the stats and the craziness that goes on. So she has got a notebook. I'm guessing she stole it from one of her little kids that she teaches that left it in the classroom and started filling in Bass and Brews in the back with stats and all this weird information. So, you know, Tori, Hook Sets with Wifey, is our librarian. You know what? That's karma coming out to help you too. You know, you gave a light, you kind of paid back some dues from help. Here you are, winning second.
That's you know, I hate saying that there's karma, but you know, I think that played a role because I think it put me in the right mindset. The week before, when I fished a tournament on Wiley with the Foothills Club, and I wasn't in the right mindset. I started the day. Somebody followed me to my starting spot and then cut me off, and it just kind of, ticked me off. And the rest of the day I was angry and I didn't fish well. And, I think starting calm and helping somebody out and having that good, happy feeling, that just, it makes a difference,
Taylor, you've been fishing a few months now with Queen City. Have you had folks that you've reached out to that have been helpful, kind of guided you? Have you gotten to that point that you've got some friends and buddies that you've made that you've been able to rely on for help?
Vinny is the man. I rely on him for everything, honestly, at this point. But like when the Fontana Lake event, I went to Dreamcatchers along with 5 other guys that showed up right before they closed, grabbing a few drop shot weights and a few things to finesse on Fontana. And I met 3 or 4 other guys there that were all fishing for Queen City, and we all ended up at the same exact ramp too. So we all have like minds. We were all thinking about safety. It's a 400-foot deep lake in some areas. So we went to the shallowest part of the entire lake. Again, for me, with only a paddle, that was like a given. I was not about to commit to an hour paddle just to get to a creek. And so like talking to these guys, hey, I did this, this, and this for 3 days pre-fishing and caught 1 fish. So they're not afraid, like Tim said, they're not afraid to say what they did and didn't do. Like and this is what I've told Vinny as well. It seems like at the end of the day, we all just want to catch fish, and that's the whole reason we're here to begin with. And so to meet other people who all have that mindset, and like the charity event that's coming up that Vinny's got going on, like I am stoked for that, because like everybody's fishing with the same thing. So this is a chance for everybody not to say, well, I did this and it didn't work. And it's just a chance for everybody to use what they've got and see who can truly outfish the other guy.
All right. So every year Queen City does a charity event where everybody gets the same tackle, the same rod, reels. A few years ago, it was like the kiddie reels. It was the Spider-Man reels and stuff like that. And what the Queen City, when is it? When is the charity event coming up, and what are the tackle and what's the rigs and tackle you're going to be given to fish that event?
So I don't know what it'll be this year, but last year, so it's the 19th, so 2 weeks from now. But last year we got so basically Biz Baits and True South supplies the tackle. They give you a couple spinner baits, buzz bait or 2, a bunch of soft plastics, and
got some
so this year we're getting some additional,
and a few hooks.
Yeah. So normally it's just the Biz Bait stuff. This year because I think people missed out on having, we never had flukes in the past. So this year they're adding a couple. But yeah, so it's, everybody starts with a couple hooks, a couple bags of soft plastics, a couple jig heads.
This is what I'm most excited for. Because this year we're getting spinners, we're getting shaky heads, we're getting jigs, we're getting Ned rigs. Nice. Like we're getting all things that everybody as a well-rounded fisherman could use.
What lake
but then I believe you choose.
It's what we call the old Carolina class. So it's Norman, Wiley, and Mountain Island are the 3 that we can go to.
So Tim and I may be going to Wiley again.
Look, if you dialed them in a few weeks ago, that might. Of course, a lot changes. That's going to be 5 weeks from that tournament. So,
it's still going to be as hot. The fish may have moved, but like the one I caught and the 2 I caught in the coves, I assume they're probably living somewhere near that cove. But the main lake stuff that Tim hit, they were very likely moving, I would assume. I don't know though.
Yeah. I felt like they were transient fish that were, just stopping at docks on their way somewhere. But yeah, I fished Norman this last weekend, and I did pretty well. I caught a lot of good fish in the 15, 16-inch range, but nothing, really big. So
I fished a charity. Go ahead. I was just going to say I fished a charity boat tournament at Norman right before summer hit, and it seemed like the plague of there was 200 anglers there in co-angling boats, and it was like 14 to 16 inches was like every single person was catching, which they go off of pounds, but that's about the size they were. We caught an 8-pound limit. That was pretty light, but the winner caught 17 pounds. So he knew where the honey holes were. So,
that's Norman. Yeah, I haven't fished Norman, but having so many folks on from the Charlotte area that fish a lot of Norman, like you need to get those 15, 16 inchers, and then you need to get one or two over 20.
Yep.
And if you can knock out one or two over 20, you're good. But man, finding those one or two 19, 20 inch spots on Norman, it seems from what I've heard from talking and interviewing people, that's the key. That's what you got to either look into it or you got to know where they are. But it's just like any other tournament. You have to get the limit. And when you get that limit, it opens up you to be able to go and try some stuff that you're not really comfortable with, or to go some areas that some big fish might be, to fish for those big fish. But if you don't get that limit, you're just trying to catch some damn fish that'll measure.
Yeah.
2 weeks ago, my tournament, I caught my limit pretty early, and they were all dinks. They were 11 to 14 inches. But what it did was like, well, shit, I can leave this place. I'm gone. And so I went to the areas that produce bigger fish, and I caught 3. I needed 2 more 17 inches, but I caught 3. But I was able to go to those places to fish for those fish and not be, kind of struggling to just say, damn, I need 1 more fish or 2 more fish or 3 more fish. But getting that limit, hey, doesn't matter how small it is. That changes the game and your mentality and how you can fish the rest of the time.
That's right. I think that's – go ahead, Tim.
I was just going to say, it's funny that tournament on Norman, I was catching, 14, 15, 16-inch fish. I was like, you know what? I'm running out of time. I put on a 12-inch worm, threw it out there, and caught a 12-inch spot. So.
Hey, so let me ask you this: Are y'all going on to Tourney X and looking at the leaderboard a lot, or you just fishing and when you get your limit, go look? How do y'all navigate the leaderboard when you're fishing in your tournaments?
Yeah, I don't look at all. I say this last tournament's probably the most I've ever looked, just because I knew I was doing fairly well. Normally, I don't like the pressure because I think knowing that other people are catching 20 inchers and you're not kind of puts unnecessary. I think it makes you change things too quick sometimes, and
yeah.
I think if you just relax and fish at what you know and not try to do what someone else is doing, I think that's what helps. I know there's people. I was going to say there's people like Landon that probably look at it every 5 minutes, and he wants to know who's catching stuff and where they are and all that. So I just try not to worry about it. Fish my thing.
I have about this much room on my kayak, so the more I look at my phone, the more chance it has of going in the water. So
you don't have it tethered?
I mean, it's tethered to me, but if I'm gone, the phone's gone. So
okay. Well, at least you're not going to lose the phone.
No, I'm not going to lose it. So I look at it once. I've only fished 2 now, so my inexperience is really only going off of 2 tournaments. So I have to take an intermission sometime throughout the day, because if not, my butt is non-existent and I can't feel it at all. Because I can't stand, I can't move. I mean, I'm literally, I am the size of my kayak. So
see, I had before I got my Hobie, I had it was a sit on top Walmart kayak, an Avalon 120, a 12-foot. Actually, it's a really good river boat. It's a paddle boat, not pedal, but it paddles straight. It's fast. But
dude, mine paddles extremely fast.
Yeah. But every time I had to go piss, and look, in the morning times, I get up, I drink a lot of water in the morning. I drink my cup of coffee. Like the first 2 or 3 hours I'm out on the water, I have to pee a lot. Before I got my Hobie, the greatest thing about my Hobie was I can stand up and pee in my drive hole. But with that other kayak, I either had to get on my knees and try to hang my little pecker off the side and pee, which didn't work a lot, or I had to go off to the bank. Every single time I had to go to the bank and get off and do all that. The hell,
I can't even get on my knees, dude. There's been so many times where I've leaned over the side like this in a little cove and just
you need a pee bottle. You need a pee bottle.
I know, but I took an intermission and I found some shallow water. I got off, and usually I have an intermission in the middle of the day. Sometime after a drought, I hit a drought. I'm like, all right, something's got to change. At Fontana, I had to re-spool an entire reel, which I ended up catching a fish on after that. So it was worth it. I had line with me. I needed it. I got tangled up. I don't remember exactly what happened. But that intermission usually refocuses me if I'm not doing well. You know, I get up, I stand up, I walk around again. My back, I feel like I'm 80 years old because I've been sitting for 5 hours kayaking, you know, just back and forth, trying to get from point A to point B. And again, once I did that and I looked at the leaderboard at Fontana and I was like, okay, I'm sitting in like 8th place because I've caught 2 decent sized fish. But then after that, I recognize that people are going to be one up in me. So it's like either A, I'm doing all right so I can keep grinding it out and just doing what I'm doing, or B, like I'm really struggling. I need to get to a spot where I know there's fish and just fish it, which for me, that limits me. And that happened at both tournaments. At Wiley, I got to that spot where I knew there'd be fish. Like Tim said, there were some docks in a little cove, and I knew I could get something in that cove. I didn't know what it would be, but I would get something. I hit that dock, got it off the jig. That was my 4th fish, got me in 7th place. I was happy. At Fontana, I didn't get to that last spot until 30 minutes until we ended the tournament. I caught my one spot. It was big enough to put me up there. One more fish, and I was in the top, maybe top 5, because there was really low limits at Fontana. So the leaderboards help sometimes, but I try to stay away from it as much as I can.
So I always think if I'm catching 20 inchers, there's at least 5 other people catching 22 inchers. That's always my mindset. I don't look at the leaderboard much. I'll enter in my fish and try not to look. But one of the things that I learned, and because I've only been fishing kayak tournaments for about 3 years now, but one thing I've learned from a couple people in our local clubs was they would look at the leaderboard to see what the folks were putting up, because as you fish more of these tournaments and as you get to know guys better, you have an idea on what they're fishing and where they're fishing, not specific spots, right? But like, oh man, Paul's offshore. He's catching 18, 19 inchers in the summer. He's offshore cranking or throwing a drop shot or something. And one of the things that I learned checking that leaderboard before it goes off is sometimes you can get an idea on what people are doing to catch fish. And you're like, hey man, I need to go throw a shaky head, or I need to go throw, something shallow and go run the banks. But I don't want it to get in my head. And when I try not to look, but it can be a tool, or it can be a detriment to what you're doing. So look, we're going to start wrapping this up. Did either of y'all have anything stupid, crazy, wild, out of the norm happen? You know, you didn't fall into water, sounds like, or anything like that. But did y'all have anything crazy that kind of happened during your pre-fishing, which you didn't pre-fish, Taylor? But you know what I'm saying. Anything wild or crazy happen on tournament day that you're like, man, this is some bullshit?
Other than my pre-fish where that guy cut me off and pissed me off for the whole day, I'd say it seems like almost every tournament I've got some kind of story like that. This tournament, it was karma. Everything went smooth. It was even pulling out of the water, which at that ramp is really hairy because it's a zoo. It just went well, and
just
I don't
one
know.
of those days.
It was probably never happened again, but man, it happened once.
Well, for me, it was like I spent a week trying to figure out where I was going to fish and stressing because I was like, dude, I want to get on the board. I want to really try something my first tournament. I want to come out with a bang. And I show up to South Point and there's like 30 other guys there. So it's like out of all the places I could have I chose the one that was clearly the hot topic for that tournament. Yeah. So that was cool for me because it showed that my decision making was kind of already going in the right direction. And then also like knowing that I was the only one fishing a popper instead of the whopper plopper or a buzzbait, which I could hear literally from every direction. And I caught my first big fish, which was one of the biggest fish I've ever caught, which was that 20.75 inch largemouth on that popper. And like I was in 3 foot of water when I caught it. In the summertime, that's rare. And so that just set the tone and got me excited for the whole season. So it's not really crazy per se, but it's definitely for me with it my first time out, knowing that I got top 7 and I could have got top 3 had I have landed that bigger fish at the end. Definitely showed me that like, even though I'm one of the only ones with a paddle, like I'm getting started in the right spot. And when I do get pedals, like everybody better watch out.
Oh, all right. You said it here first. They
better watch out. He's throwing down.
Hey, Taylor, all right, one thing that you took from this tournament that you're going to take with you for the rest of the tournaments you fish this year.
I really like what Tim said about like fishing what you're comfortable with and not trying to fish 50 different things to find out your groove. Like, I know I'm good with some top water. I've gotten better with shaky head. I've gotten better with drop shot. Instead of throwing some random swim bait or something just because that's what everybody else is doing at a certain time during the day in certain conditions. Like, what I'm good at, throw it until I catch a fish, because I will catch a fish if I continue to fish it like I know it needs to be done. Like, especially if I know we're not talking about Fontana, but I learned an extreme amount at Fontana, a deeper lake, and that wouldn't have happened had I not fished Event 7. Event 7 definitely set the tone for the rest of the season, good or bad. And so the learning experience for me is just like fish what you're comfortable with. And even I caught all 4 fish on 1 rod, and I had 6 rods with me. So the same rod I caught topwater was also a jig rod. So it's like, and Vinny's told me this as well for Queen City guys. He's trying to introduce younger guys and guys who are afraid to, thinking it's very overwhelming. It doesn't matter if you have 1 rod, 1 lure, and a $300 yak. That's a very low barrier of entry. You can still do something, even if you're just going out for small bass to make $200. Like, you can do something, and that's what I learned. Like, I'm just like all these other guys, even though I don't have a pimped out rig. Like, I can fish with 1 rod and 1 lure and still catch a limit as long as I keep that confidence.
Mm-hmm. Tim, how about you, man? What's one thing you're going to take away from this tournament? You finished second, so you're shooting for a first next. Are you in the AOI standings at all?
Yeah, I'm sitting.
That's 2 questions, but are you in the AOI? And also, what's the one thing you learned that you can take from this for the rest of the season?
So that second place moved me up to 8th in the AOI, and like I said, my teammate is Landon, so I think he and I are sitting first on the team side. And the biggest thing I learned, like I said, is having a teammate like Landon. He also just started 3 years ago. He and I were rookies the same year. That's how we hooked up and became teammates. And he's kind of had the same trajectory, only a little faster. I think, he and I skunked a lot that first season. Last season, we were just trying to catch limits. This year, now that he's in position, he's going for it. And, the thing that dawned on him earlier this year was when he listens to his gut, he does much better. If he's trying to do what other people are doing, he doesn't do well. And I was trying to be like him. I was trying to fish his technique, throw his wacky rig. I can watch him catch, 24-inch bass all the time, and I can't do it. So I went back to what I'm comfortable with, a shaky head, and it worked out. So, I'm going to probably throw a lot more shaky head and less wacky rig.
Well, look, guys, I appreciate y'all coming on. This is great to recap Queen City. Stop 7. We got a couple more tournaments. I say we. I mean, I'm a part of Queen City. I'd like to fish when they're over in this area, and hopefully soon I can start sneaking out that way. But I appreciate y'all coming on, sharing your tournament day and everything that you learned, the baits and all the stuff that you did for that. This is awesome. So I appreciate y'all coming on and sharing your story with us. And congratulations on your finishes. Second is huge in Queen City. What were I did not look at how many people there. I'm guessing it was somewhere around 100, give or take 5 or so.
98.
I think we were like,
yeah.
I think it was 94, maybe somewhere in the 90s. Yeah.
And then Taylor, second time out in the tournament, Queen City, coming out and popping off a 7th. I mean, man, that'll get you your mind right to be like, man, I actually can come out and compete. And that's one of the biggest things when you get new anglers into these clubs. You can get them out there, and if they can catch a big fish and they can catch big fish, or even catch a small fish and win some money, go out there, and if they can learn that they can compete, that's a big thing that keep people coming. And to have these big numbers out there and have these big pots, you got to have people that want to come out. At some point, they got to be competitive in some way, or they'll quit. So you got to have that stuff coming on. And again, that's another thing for Queen City, that people helping the newer anglers that come out there, not necessarily young, but just newer kayak anglers, that keeps folks coming out. So, well, look, any parting words or wisdoms that you want to leave any of the listeners with?
Hey, Taylor and I both talked about Vinny. I think when my first season, I was texting Vinny the dumbest things. I think back in hindsight, and I'm like, what? he probably has 500 guys doing this to him, and he acts like you're the only person talking to him. And he
That's
has
facts.
time for everybody. And
Mhm.
I don't think this group would be where it is without Vinny. So if you're looking for a club that's got some good people and a great leader, and Queen City's place.
Dude, I think it's such a level playing field. It's unreal. Like you look at, I aspire one day to be able to fish full time. Everybody does who fishes because they don't want to go to a full time job. They just want to fish. But like obviously where we're at now, being on a level playing field, we could go out to the next tournament. You could place in the top 10 in any of these tournaments. I think there's going to be those one or two guys that are always there. But other than that, like some people have bad days. Some people have good days. Like that confidence is so fun. It's exhilarating to know like I could show up and I could place and get money. And I know, like Tim said, like that's what makes you feel comfortable to show up on a brand new body of water, because you can at the same time you're learning and practicing, you're also competing. And I competed in college, and this is the only level of competition I have right now. And so to have an avenue for competition, B, the potential to make money, and C, like we're fishing and we love to fish. There's nothing bad about this whatsoever.
Taylor, I don't want to be a dream killer, but I am going to say this on a
Don't you
post that I saw
dare.
this
Don't
week.
you dare.
Kevin Van Dam, considered the greatest tournament
He's retired
bass
now.
angler out there. Kevin Van Dam's total tournament winnings in 33 years is $7.1 million. That is insanely stupid how little bit of money that is. We're talking about as the guy that is considered the greatest tournament angler that we have ever seen only has a winnings. Now, this is not including his endorsements and stuff, which he's made a lot more money on, but just straight winnings of $7 million in 33 years, the greatest tournament angler we've ever seen. Taylor, I don't want to be a dream killer, buddy, but man, you're going to win some money, but you're not. It's probably not going to be a profit.
I would rather be poor and on a kayak catching a 20-incher than rich and in a penthouse looking at other guys catching 20-inchers. I'm just going to tell you that right now.
I like that. Well, look, guys, I appreciate y'all coming on. This was great. This was fun. Always a great time hanging out with the Queen City folks and hearing about their journey to tournament fishing and what they did and how they competed in a huge local club. Y'all hang out in the back when we get this in. We'll talk some in the green room in the back. But look, y'all, thank you for listening to Bass and Brews. Again, it's your weekly distraction, but the Queen City Chronicles side. And we're glad that you're here. And if you are in the Carolina area, you have Queen City you can go holler at. You got CCKF and CKA over here in the Raleigh area. Queen City also has a South Carolina, Western North Carolina division. There's a bunch of trails in the Carolinas where you can go buy yourself a $300 kayak, take you 2 or 3 rods out there. You can fish, you can catch fish, and you might win a little bit of money. Appreciate y'all listening. Until next time, hey-o!